Hey everybody, welcome back to season 3 of Highly Unlikely with Josh and Jenaye. And we're excited today. One of our friends, Jared Hineman, is joining us. And Jared is the executive director of One More, One Less, which serves adoptive children, families, all the things. And so we're going to get into that in a minute. But Jared, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I feel like every time I'm on a podcast, I feel very unqualified to be here, but I'm excited to try to act like I know something.
Well, we're going to help show everybody why you're so qualified to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So, but first we got to start with a question from the bowl.
Yeah, let's pull from the middle and hope it's a good one.
Is this going to be like a charade I have to do?
Oh my word. No. This is a good one. Very deep.
I can't act it out.
Okay. Well, you might act this one out. What do you think is your most annoying quirk?
I wish my wife was home and she could probably answer it for me.
Well, good thing Josh and I have one another right now.
So I'd say mine, and I have an example to go along with this. I'd say mine is when I get into a new hobby, I feel the need to master it as quick as possible. And so I'd say I don't always enjoy the process of getting to be good at something or learn something because I want to get to the end as quick as possible. An example would be I bought a 3D printer because I wanted to learn how to 3D print over the wintertime. And I've been printing a surfboard piece by piece for the last probably 3 months. And it's taken me over 300 hours to print because I wanted to master this concept of like designing and printing something. And so I'm going out to my shop probably, I don't know, every 6 hours to check on what I'm printing. And I have my printer going at nighttime and I check the camera in bed at night and it drives my wife crazy because I want to make sure I get good at printing. Not like it's a really life skill, but I just want to learn how to do it. And so I think it's probably the fact that I rush to get good at stuff or try to get good at stuff as quick as possible.
Oh my word, that's hilarious. I don't even know what a 3D printer is. Like, is this like now a common thing for people to have? Like how we have a printer at our house?
I'd say it's getting there. You can print practical things. It's just like you turn it on and all of a sudden you come back 12 hours and it has a little gift for you. Whatever you told it to print, it just gives you. It's kind of cool.
That is very interesting, and I'm going to look into that.
That's a great answer.
Yes.
I'm not good at it. It's my flaw of like wanting to become a master, but I'd probably struggle to master stuff. I just like to think I can.
So let's say you find something that's very intriguing in like 2 months. Are you going to abandon your 3D printing future and change to your new hobby?
I'd say I'm pretty good about not abandoning stuff. But I will say that, yeah, it is a hard thing to balance of how do you balance all these hobbies at once? And my wife is the one that will probably have a better answer for that, but I like to think I won't abandon it.
Well, that's great. I was going to say, yeah, I've heard of people that you just like go all in on the one thing, but then when you find something new, you go all in on that. So it doesn't sound like you're that kind of person though. I would love for us to share each other's.
I would love that too.
Which I kind of want to predict what you're going to say mine is. I annoy myself by how much I say
Oh, I wasn't going to say that.
I knew you wouldn't.
No.
Is it going to be something about how I'm a wrecking ball?
No.
Josh refers to me as a wrecking ball.
Only sometimes. Sometimes.
He can just follow the trail of me throughout the house because it's like, oh, Jenaye was here. There's a bit of a mess.
But when she does something, she only thinks about that thing. Like so, even cooking.
If I'm cleaning, I'm a wrecking ball when I clean. Or if I'm cooking, I'm a wrecking ball in that kitchen.
She doesn't worry about throwing anything away while she's cooking.
Hey, I've gotten better.
Putting anything in the sink. It's just the cooking.
Yeah.
That's it.
So are you the type that will like microwave something and walk away from it and forget that you microwaved it? Or are you always going to go back to the microwave and realize that you were microwaving?
I mean, if I forget, thank goodness the microwave beeps at me, right?
That's true.
So that probably means the fact that I know it beeps at me, I do forget about it. Yes, yeah. I'm like, I will start. Yeah, I will. You could go on so many examples where it's like, we're cleaning the house and Josh comes around the corner and he's like, why have you pulled everything out of your bedside table and you're reorganizing this right now? Because I was wiping on the bedside table and then I realized my drawer was kind of unorganized and now I'm starting the drawer. Yeah. Sorry.
It's like it.
That it's very annoying.
Okay, say one of mine.
Oh gosh.
We can move on.
Josh will gladly not cover this. Oh, what is yours? I think it's probably, I should have thought about this more. Probably the look you get when you're thinking, which really just looks like you're about to murder someone. That was extreme. No, not like that. Just looks very upset. But he's only thinking, but it's extremely hard to read. There's a reason why I think some people on staff might be scared of you, but
she's like, you need to smile. You need to smile.
Are you mad right now? No. And I say, well, tell your face that because it looks kind of mad. So
that was a pretty gentle one. So thanks. That was gracious.
Do you think you have worse ones?
I think I probably have worse ones, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, enough about that.
That was fun.
Great question.
Jared, I'm so glad that you're on today. I'm really proud of you, just getting to know you and all the things that you've invested your life in. I think you talk about your quirk, but I think that's kind of indicative of how you give yourself to things that matter and that are really important. And so whether that's your faith or your family or a new entrepreneurial effort that you're making or one more, one less, just seeing you take things on and really have a great way of making them better or making them thrive. And so I just want to say that starting off, you are qualified because to be on this podcast and to talk about because you're highly unlikely in how you do those things and you make things better than when you first touch them. And so I want to kind of get into that because you went to NDSU, you have a degree, and then you've kind of branched out in a lot of things that you're doing. So just tell everybody about that and just who you are, your family. Tell them your story, especially from college till now.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I went to NDSU. During my time there, I was really involved with Chi Alpha and got plugged in with what's now Northview Church, and had a great time there. I always felt like I didn't really want to go the conventional route of getting a job outside of college. I think that I wanted to skip a few steps if I could, or try to do something a little bit different. And that's just how my brain has always worked. During my time at NDSU, Amos Colbo, who you guys all know as well, we started a company probably when I was a junior in college. And so over my lunch breaks, I'd literally go home between work and college, and over my lunch breaks, we'd have meetings on Zoom talking about this idea and how we're going to make it work. And we've been going for 6 years now, 5.5 years now, and built a company and found a way to turn it into something that employed people and gave us jobs. And it was super exciting. I kind of got a taste of the ability to, I'd say, fix problems and find ways to help people. And it was super exciting. And throughout that journey as well came One More, One Less, which we're excited to talk about too, which is an organization that gives out grants to people that are adopting. And it's something where there's a broken system, and I was not personally adopted. My family was to some degree affected by adoption, and being able to help support and fix that problem is something that I think gives me a lot of life. And it's some of the ways I'm wired, which is just how can I fix problems through systems or through innovation.
That's awesome.
I love that. So you picked up One More, One Less. It was already kind of running, right? And you became the executive director. And how did that all transpire? Why'd you do it?
Yeah. So One More, One Less, to be clear, everybody that's part of it, including I, are all volunteers. It's a volunteer organization. It's something that was part of another church in Bismarck, and a group of members who were all adopting realize there's a gap in this space where there's no way to really, there's ways to support families, but there wasn't a great way to support the financial burden to adoption. And so they just developed this kind of, this group developed a system for donating in a way to help support families that are adopting. And they ran it for probably 6 to 7 years or so, or maybe 8 years. And it just got to the point where all the families were transitioning at the same time, where the kids they had adopted were getting older and their families were getting busier. And so they decided to close it down. During that time, I heard about it. And I kind of reflected on a sermon of if not you, who, Not saying I was the most qualified person to take it on, but who am I to assume that like it's something that I shouldn't do, or who am I to assume that somebody else is going to do it? And so it was kind of one of those things where, it had been birthed. It was an idea that was working, and they ended up closing it. And I felt called to just reach out and see, is it something that they'd let me help, keep moving forward, or something that we could keep, bringing life to. And they were super excited about it. And so they had shut down for maybe a year or so, maybe a little less. And I ended up coming in. And I say I, and I hate the word I because there's always a team behind this, right? It's not just me. But we came in and we were able to bring it in as its own nonprofit and pull it away from a church so that it was able to be something that people could, it's a little easier to get support that way. And we could make our reach greater. And so we kind of reworked it, rebranded it, and rebuilt it up, where since then we've given out over, over probably 30 grants of $5,000+ since we rebirthed it. And I've been able to, I'd say stabilize it to the point where it'll live on as long as we want it to. And we have great donors, and it's something that is just super awesome. It brings me a lot of life.
That's awesome. What did kind of the process of, you said like, if not you, then who, maybe was the message?
Yeah.
So what fears did you have, or maybe things that made you to take pause in following what you felt like God had called you to do with one more, one less?
So my family, my dad was adopted, and we're pro-life, and it's something that to us is, as these issues are going around the world, it's like, we got to take a stance. And so this is a way that we were able to, double down. Like, we are trying to do something about these issues. And it's something that our family wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for adoption. And so we're incredibly thankful for it. And so, I don't know if my wife and I will adopt. I don't know if that's something that we feel called to yet, but this is an area that I knew I could help use my skills, or what I think I have skills in, and hopefully drive some impact and create something that can help a lot of other families. And I think the big thing too is some fears I had is, what do I know? Why am I qualified? I was, I think, 21 years old at the time, or 22 years old when I started to, go through this. And it's like, what do I know about this to be trying to, build this nonprofit back up? And I think the reality is nobody's qualified in the roles they probably do. And that's the big takeaway for me, is that the more I get around people that I look up to, I realize that they're all figuring it out for the most part too. And that's kind of part of, if not me, who. It's that I might not have been the perfect person for it, but I knew that with a team around me, we'd be able to find a way to bring it back to life and make it into something that was bigger than it was, which we were successfully able to do.
That's awesome.
So Jared, this all happened around 2020, didn't it? Or right before?
Yep, right before. Yep.
Yeah. So you're one of those lucky people who took something on that ended up really being affected by 2020, right? I think people have just had a harder time adopting, or the need for adoption has changed. Can you talk about your experience in that and the challenge of that?
Yeah. So we, when 2020 hit, there are things that I don't even fully all the way understand with the adoption world. But recruiting, different things went down. They weren't able to get in hospitals like they used to be able to. And so the adoption world just saw a change that we weren't anticipating. When we first took it on, and before I even took it on, these sort of things weren't really an issue. But the world of adoptions changed. There's consultants that help you adopt versus just going through an agency. And that's something that we had to learn how to navigate. And on top of that, we did see adoptions go down a little bit, where we saw less families adopting, and also the expense going up, where families didn't have a disposable income that they used to adopt. And so you kind of had a little bit of this weird economy that was affecting adoption and making it so families that normally wanted to adopt were kind of a little concerned and felt like it wasn't for them anymore, just because of the financial piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that we had a family kind of during that period of time over the past 3 years where they wanted to pursue it and were looking into it. And I gave them the resources that I had and the agency that we had used. And And she came back saying the agency had said, hey, we just really don't have any birth moms. Yeah. And that was an agency in South Dakota. And so, but they didn't have any reason of why it was different. So that's just very interesting. And one fun fact, even just about us, is that we have been a recipient from One More, One Less. I don't remember who told us about it. Maybe Troy told us about it. And so we applied while we were in the process for adoption and received a grant. And so grateful for that. And yeah, if you are going to walk down this path, unless you have special circumstances of income, it does take people feeling led to give, take amazing organizations like you guys to help equip families, it's sad, but also understandable of the cost. And so just love the purpose and the needs that One More, One Less is meeting. And I love that we actually have emotion and our sweet daughter as evidence of the reason and purpose of what you guys are doing.
Yeah, what I love about it is I think, nothing thrives in isolation. And when people are trying to go on a journey of like adoption or something like that, and they're doing it on their own, and there's financial costs and there's like all these things adding up, that's a super lonely road. And so to me, it's not even about like, hey, here's $3,000 or $5,000 to help you along the way. It's the shot in the arm of like, hey, we believe in you. We want to help you. This is important. And just like that encouragement that comes from knowing, man, we're on this really hard, long, uncertain journey, but there's other people that have been there and they're willing to stand with us and come alongside us. And I think that's been some of the power of what One More, One Less has provided.
Yeah. In what other ways have you helped adoptive families? I know I've heard a little bit of your heart for helping adoptive families, but outside of grants, what else does One More, One Less help provide or try to provide?
Yeah. We offer prayer support, and that's something where we have a prayer team that would reach out to couples that are, whether they have received a grant or they're applying for a grant. Our prayer team starts to reach out and just asking, how can we pray for you? In this time where adoption's getting more expensive because you have to go the consultant route, and placements might take a little longer. It's a very lonely place, I feel like, for these families. And you don't know what their story is, whether there's infertility or just they feel really called to it. And they're confused, like, why, God, is it taking so long to adopt? I feel called to this. And so having that prayer team that reaches out is something that's been really helpful. And I feel like helping meet families' needs because they actually understand them. Another piece is, we try to create community. We try to connect families that have adopted with families that are in like-minded situations that are adopting. And I think that's something that's been able to make families feel heard and answer questions that really only they probably have the experience or the place that they can speak into. And so by creating that community, it's something that I feel like is helping connect the dots for a lot of families that are considering adoption.
Yeah, I think that for us has been such a powerful thing, connecting to other adoptive families, because only certain people have been in a room where someone literally just birthed the baby and then they hand them over to you. Like, you cannot describe how awkward, but also the immense peace and emotion that comes in that moment. Like, so that is amazing. And yeah, we have found just beautiful friends. I think Bismarck specifically, because that's where we are, just has the most beautiful adoptive community, families that have adopted, and just love how every story is so unique, right? Like, not one adoption, it looks same as the other. Just like a birth, like an actual birth. You're about to have a child born, and you are going to learn, Josh says, that it's the most beautifully traumatic thing he's ever experienced. So just prepare yourself. But I love that every adoption story is unique, just like every birth story is. So
something that I have found is interesting well on the journey with One More, One Less is that more people are one way or another impacted or have a heart or call for adoption than I think I ever thought. It's something where you kind of talk about, I help out with this adoption ministry, and light bulbs go off with people that I don't think I really ever, people you wouldn't suspect would have a passion for it. and maybe I'm just bad at reading people, but just stuff where like, I think it just makes you, it makes you realize that God has placed this call on orphans and how we've all been orphans. And just, I don't know, there's something about it that I think has been really fulfilling for me to see. And in awe, I just can't believe it.
Yeah. That was the cool part of leading Evangel and being transparent with our church, that through the adoption process, and how many people came up and said, like, I have a granddaughter that's adopted, or I am adopted. And I'm like, how have I been friends with you for this long? But you realize for some people, it is very much a part of their introduction of who they are. And for a lot, it's like, no, this is just the avenue by which God gave me my family. And it is the most beautiful gospel illustration. Like you said, we all are orphans and we all are adopted into God's family. And it is so his heart and so beautiful. In what ways have you maybe grown in understanding the Father's heart, or understanding that side of God, the Father, through this experience?
You know, a lot of it is knowing God will provide, certain things with, should we, do we need to lower grant amounts? Like, we just like the finances might not be there this quarter for having our grants be $5,000, and donors making it clear that no, we stay at 5,000. If not, we get up to $10,000 grants. Like, I think that being able to see the calling behind what God has placed on it has been super rewarding. On a personal side, like recognizing that we all were orphaned until we knew God. And so, I think putting yourself in that place too, it does make you grow closer to God and understand how incredible of a thing adoption is.
Right.
Yeah, that just resonates with me, because I was literally at a different church at their prayer meeting when God really confirmed for me, like, this is what you're supposed to do. And the pastor who was sharing that night talked about how every one of us has been adopted in to God's family, and just how powerful that is. And I do want to just pause for everybody listening, because I think it's easy at times to say, like, well, these people feel called to adoption, or, this is something that they're passionate about. And so I'm going to click ahead, or I'm going to skip this podcast, or this doesn't really pertain to me. But in Matthew 25, Jesus says, what you do to the least of these, or for the least of these, you're doing directly unto me. And in biblical times, that was almost always translated into those that were outcasts in society, like Jesus serving and healing lepers, or people that couldn't go into the temple and worship, or, but also over and over and over again, you read the orphan and the widow, looking out for the orphan and the widow in their distress. And that somewhat directly translates over to today, but widows are more empowered, in America in 2023 to be able to continue to move forward with their lives than they were in biblical times, where they couldn't, purchase land. They couldn't, make business dealings. Like, they literally had to be dependent on somebody else to make a way for them. And I think that's what the correct translation is to today, is there's people in this world that do not have the ability to make a way for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's the responsibility of the believer or of the church to help make a way for those people and to step in and be that bridge. It's not government's responsibility. It's not a legislature's responsibility. Like, they can all have a part in it, but it is the church's job to take the lead on really being the answer to that call. And so we view that as children who are in desperate situations are the most vulnerable of the vulnerable. They cannot help themselves. That's why your kid cries at night and you're dead tired, but you get out of bed and you go over there because they're dependent on you.
Right.
And so we just believe there's such a strong biblical mandate that everybody should do something, not just the few people who, care about vulnerable kids.
Yeah, and I will share my stance. We pretty bold. I pretty boldly share my stance on this, which not everyone agrees with. But when I looked at Scripture, and man, I pored over Scripture before we adopted, and kind of came to this conclusion of, man, I don't know why in the church we say, hey, I need to pray about if I need to adopt. I actually think Scripture points us to, we all assume that we will, or we're giving to an adoption, or we are playing a part in adoption in some, or foster care, because I feel like it's very much the same thing. And just say, God, you literally have to stop me. If it's a yes until God says no, rather than it's a no until God says yes. It's just very interesting. There's a couple things that in the church world or believer world that we flip that I've seen. And And he will 100% shut the door if it's not what you're supposed to do. We've had friends pursue it and pursue adoption. And then God does shut the door for whatever reason. And so like he's faithful, he's sovereign to shut doors, you know? So that I think was one thing where, and once you walk through it, whatever it is, like for us, we've walked through NICU stays with our kids, and forever now we're advocates for NICU, whatever is happening within there. We adopted. We're forever an advocate for that. So whatever experiences you've walked through, you're an advocate for. So that I think was a part of me feeling like we have to advocate for kind of a right view of adoption and helping people get there. Right?
Yes.
Can I ask you guys two questions? I know my job is to be talking more normally, but I want to ask you
that.
this question.
That's awesome.
Hey,
yes.
At what point in your guys' marriage did you guys both feel like you were supposed to adopt? Or at what point was this conversation being had with you both?
Tell me if you remember this. What's your perspective?
I think we were always open. In
I am
theory.
pretty sure in dating, I told Josh, this is going to be a part of my future. So if you're scared of that, maybe don't marry me.
Well, yeah, I think it was always like the door is open to adoption, right?
Yeah,
But then-
like we talked about adopting first before having bio kids.
Okay.
There's a
wow.
discussion because that was the lead pastor before us. They adopted first and then had 3 bio kids. And our sweet son came along before that happened.
He budged in line.
Yeah, but then I think too, you can feel a conviction of it, which I totally did. And then I would say we grew in being comfortable in what we had, and we had our son. And then we felt total peace about another child. And so we just started trying to get pregnant. I don't know how many months went by, maybe 3. And I am just a black and white person in my nature. And so I was like, we feel peace. If we're not getting pregnant, that means we're supposed to adopt. Like, why would God have said this? Why would we feel peace? And if this was the route, we would have gotten pregnant. It just means we need to do a different route. Josh did not agree with that.
I was scared. I was just scared.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think I was scared too, but I just am very black and white, even in my being scared, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was prayer. And we have said this, a part of our adoption testimony is we have never seen God answer prayer so quickly, so just blatantly in your face and efficiently as when we were praying about and through adoption, whether it was, God, are we supposed to do this? He took away every excuse. And then when our daughter's birth mom picked us, she was due in 6 weeks. And we confirmed with a match meeting 4 weeks out from her due date. So any delay in us hearing him, Lily would not be in our family. Yeah. So I just think too, God knew that. And so that's a cool testimony. That could be 5 hours of stories. But
do you guys have advice for couples that are maybe struggling to agree or mutually feel that they're called to it? I know this is kind of putting you on the spot. That's a big question.
Yeah, it's a great question.
I think you really have to search your heart and say, what does the Bible say? And then what am I actually wrestling with on this? Right. And I think there does have to be an acknowledgement that like in America, we build our own homes, we build on our own land. We don't really naturally include other people in our lives. We're taught to be independent, not interdependent. And so in America, you have, 2 adults and 3 children. And so you buy a dining room table that seats 5. Maybe 6. But the way of the gospel is, Zacchaeus, come down. I'm coming to your house today. Like you bought a table for whoever was passing by, whoever was in need. And there was this interdependence, this openness to inviting people in. And we've become so cultural and not countercultural in our understanding. So that's kind of a theological, but I just think the table and the door need to be open. Unless God says, hey, the door's closed, right. Or your house is on fire, in other ways. And you're like, hey, it's not a right environment right now.
Yeah. I guess I wouldn't encourage anyone to have one, if you're married, someone that's like, I'm totally against this. And you're like, well, we're doing it. But with us, we were in unity. Josh needed more time to kind of wrap his head around it. I definitely pushed us through. I did all of our training. I would like fill Josh in. This is what you're supposed to know. This is how you're not going to be biased. I took all the tests. We did all the things required, and I would bring him along and have him sign things that he needed to. He was not resistant by any means, but I would say, like what he said, you need to ask, what are you afraid of? Like, what are you really afraid of? Because there is a lot of stigma around adoption, and you got to break that down. I mean, telling family members, the first two responses I got was someone weeping and being like, you can never have kids. I'm like, I didn't say that. Like, that is not what adoption means. And someone else that started crying and said, haven't you ever heard of people that adopted and then they grew up to murder their parents? And I said, yes. Have you heard of the Menendez brothers? They did the same thing. So I'm like, no, let's break these down. That's not a reason to not adopt because you've heard of one scenario. So I think too, ask why you're afraid. What are you wrestling with? And acknowledge and validate those feelings. But, as believers, we are not to operate in fear. Power, love, and sound mind.
And the Lord did speak to me. And he did it in time, for it to work out. And I think there has to just be room for that too of like, man, I just need and Jenaye and I would say are people who are not like, okay, God's going to speak and then we're going to go. We are constantly proceeding with caution.
Right.
God
can't steer the idle ship. Just get it moving and he'll...
Got some bumpers on the side.
Right. He'll keep you on the right path.
Yeah, no, proceed. And if you're going the wrong direction, he is faithful to redirect, or to close that door.
And for me, sometimes it's a nice big love smack. Like I need more than a bumper, right? I had one other thought about that. Oh, I think too, people just say, I know there's a pressure, Josh felt a pressure to like, we got this little baby and just you're supposed to like love them right away. And no, they're a stranger to you. Yep. And that's where being connected to other adoptive families is so great. But I just remember being in the NICU and Lily needed her diaper changed and Josh just looked at me and we had a boy before Lily. So all we knew was boy, changing a boy's diaper. And I was like, can you do it, babe? And he started and he just stopped and he said, babe, I just feel very uncomfortable right now. Like, I don't want to do this. And this does not feel like my child. And it was like, I totally get that. It's totally fine. Then he talks to his best friend who's had 2 girls. And he's like, oh, I felt that same way just because it's a girl. It's weird. And he's like, okay. And you have to discern and there can be that. Am I feeling this because it's adoption? Or just because that is what it is with babies? You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's a new experience.
And these are some things I feel like people just don't talk about that maybe bring shame to people. And we need to be talking about these things. And I'm glad you guys are, shining light on that.
Right. And I gave myself 9 months to feel a super great bond with my daughter. Because I was like, you know what? Her birth mom had 9 months of her feeling her kicks, feeling connected. And yeah, you can just feel like this pressure to like almost fake it till you make it, which you love that child. But there's a difference when you switch to like, oh, the way we look in each other's eyes or like they know my voice now. And yeah, just that stuff, which is beautiful.
That's awesome.
You're a better podcast host than we are.
Yeah, right.
I just know these are things people feel and it's such a sensitive subject. And that's the thing about adoption is that it's not, everybody comes into it with different feelings and it gets really sensitive and it's hard to, I know it is hard to navigate. And that's something that I've had to learn over my time, helping with One Less. So.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just say one more thing, because I think the other thing that really helped us was like we were talking about dogs before the podcast actually started. And like you're asking me if we got a dog yet. And I was telling you why we can't or won't. And
you keep showing me all these cute pictures of dogs. I'm like, stop it. We're not doing this.
It's the doodle place that I follow that keeps posting the pictures.
And I'm like,
their fault.
You're following them. Unfollow them, Joshua. You have the control. Sorry.
But if I were to get a dog, do you know what I would do? I would follow them on Instagram. I would read about different breeds. I would build up I would move towards that. And I think with adoption, it's either like a yes or no right away for people. Where one of the game changers for us was like a book somebody gave us called Adoption Miracles.
It's like the teeniest, tiniest book. And if you've not read it, it's like have it on your coffee table. It's beautiful. I think it's Karen Kingsbury that wrote it.
But it's just like miracles that happen in adoptive families. And that moved our heart in such a way to like help us give the yes. So I think there's things like that, like look into it, like read about it. Don't just look at the price tag and the whatever, like read the stories about it and find people in your life who have done it and talk to them. And
one, I just feel, I always tell people, man, it doesn't hurt to call some agencies, or now there was not consultants when we adopted. It changes so much. Like, when people want to meet with me, I'm like, someone who adopted the past 2 years is far more qualified. Something just popped up on the screen, guys. Sorry, it's over his face. We don't want to hide your face.
Is it a time limit? It's not on my screen.
No, it's like a lock. I'm so sorry. I don't think we've ever had this many interruptions, which to me just says the enemy really doesn't want people to hear this. So we rebuke you in Jesus' name.
Do we need to pick up somewhere, or can we just keep going? I'll just give a natural transition, and then if you want to use it, you can. Which now I feel like I've created a break in the podcast. Okay, here's what I want to say. Okay, so Jared, before we're done today, I just want you to talk about what's in your heart for the future, what's in the future of One More, One Less, like what is God stirring, what do you see happening?
Man, this is exciting. This is something that, this has been put on my heart for quite some time. Seeing foster care and seeing the need for that space and knowing what you guys have going on with the Lily Initiative. It's something that I have, been processing through, praying about. And Josh, I was able to talk to you, talk to others within your church, and we've decided that we're going to bring One More, One Less over to Evangel, and join forces, which is super exciting for me.
Yeah, and we're pumped. So this is a big reveal on Highland Lake.
I didn't build it up very good. I don't know how to do it.
You did. I think it's great. I love positive reinforcement. So those that listen not halfway through a podcast, I'm like, you listen all the way, because you just got to hear something so exciting that's coming.
Yeah, so we are rolling. The plan is, there's things that have to happen for it to work, but the plan in motion is to roll what One More, One Less is doing into the Lily Initiative, and to begin to not just minister to foster families and foster kids, but also to now equip and empower pre-adoptive, post-adoptive families, specifically with scholarships to help them pay for adoption, because we know that's a huge obstacle for people. But hopefully in the future, even more resources and connectedness with other adoptive families. So it is what God is doing through the Lily Initiative in our community. Like, it was just in the Fargo Forum this last week, there was an article about it, and what God's doing in our church family, in their heart for generosity, in our community, and seeing the church coming together and doing something. You alluded to it, like when Roe v. Wade was struck down, people were like, well, the church better care about kids that are alive as much as they do as kids that aren't born yet. And I was like, we do, and it's already in motion, and it's happening. And this is another way to serve those kids and those families.
Yeah, so exciting.
Yeah, it's been a super exciting conversation with us as we navigate, how are we going to do this? What does this look like? And there's a lot of question marks, right? Of how are we going to what does the end of this look like? But I know that I've been working with Josh's team and explaining our systems and how we do things. And we're kind of figuring out, what does it look like for you guys to start giving out grants? And we'll be hopefully by summertime officially basically working with you guys, which will be super exciting.
Yeah. It's really, really cool.
This proves we have such beautiful communication, because I'd heard murmurings of this, but I actually did not know that it was a for sure thing.
It's hour by hour almost. Like, I just talked to Pastor Alicia and Annika yesterday, texted Jared, was trying to figure out where we are on it. And so it's just
That's
it's totally developing right now.
Right.
And there's a legal side, right? So we have we have to have a legal team that gets everything, done correctly. So it's, when it's official, it's official. But we got the board approval, and we're in process of joining forces. And, it's something that I felt really called to, especially over the last 6 months, seeing what you guys are doing, and obviously being in touch with Josh, and knowing there's a huge need here. And it's such a fun organization to be able to come in under, which is super fun.
Yeah.
Well, Jared, it wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't for you.
Right.
You know, so whether that makes you just a really powerful bridge, you know, to create continuity, but also thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars being given out to families, but also you've raised a lot of money too to let this thing continue. And so I just see it as like you being faithful with the portion God gave you, and then not just quitting, but looking out for the future of what's going to happen next. And I just think that is so commendable, because you could have just dropped it and walked away, let somebody else pick it up, or, you know, but I think you've been so faithful with it. And when we're faithful with things God cares about, he blesses them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which has been so true with this. And I mean, I can't believe the impact we've made and what God's used it for. And I can't wait to see, you know, what the next year has in store for it. So
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So cool. Thanks for letting us partner with you guys and see what is going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being on Highly Unlikely. This was so fun. Such a fun conversation. And probably the most fun conversation starter question that we've done thus far, I would say. Well, for those of you listening, if you enjoyed this podcast, or if you want to encourage someone else with it, share it with them. Make sure you subscribe and rate so more people hear about Highly Unlikely with Josh and Jenaye. And we will see you next episode.